A large-scale aerial or missile conflict between Israel and Iran would mark a turning point not just for those two nations, but for the entire Middle East and the wider international community. While the world has seen periods of tension and localized clashes in the region, the scenario of a direct, high-intensity exchange between two such determined and well-equipped actors would unleash a cascade of effects, reshaping economies, security doctrines, and political alliances for years to come. To begin with, the immediate aftermath for Israel would be defined by the sheer scale of rebuilding that such a confrontation would necessitate. The physical damage alone would be staggering. Modern cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa, once bustling with daily life, could find themselves marred by craters, collapsed buildings, and disrupted infrastructure. Military bases, always high-priority targets, could be rendered inoperable, while vital infrastructure, roads, airports, power plants, and communication hubs could be struck repeatedly, turning once thriving urban centers into zones of emergency response and reconstruction. The cost of such widespread destruction would be measured not only in currency, but in human terms. Civilian casualties, always the most tragic aspect of modern warfare, would mount quickly. Hospitals and clinics, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of wounded, would have to stretch resources to the breaking point. Displacement would become a grim reality for many, families forced to flee their homes, seeking shelter wherever safety could be found. The social fabric, already frayed by years of tension, would be put under extraordinary strain, with housing, healthcare, and social services all scrambling to respond. Israel's economy, known for its dynamism and innovation, would face an unprecedented challenge. Tourism, a vital sector for many Israeli cities, would likely collapse. The country's high-tech industry, often described as the startup nation's engine of growth, could be set back by both physical destruction and an exodus of talent seeking stability elsewhere. Foreign investment, so crucial for economic vitality, would be deterred by the uncertainty and risk. Even after the cessation of hostilities, the echoes of conflict would linger, slowing economic recovery and dampening consumer and investor confidence. On the military front, Israel would incur formidable expenses. The Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow, and other advanced missile defense systems, remarkable for their effectiveness but costly to operate, would need rapid replenishment. Each intercepted missile comes at a high financial cost, and the sheer volume of incoming threats could strain even Israel's well-resourced defense establishment. Beyond that, the need to repair or replace damaged aircraft, armored vehicles, and other military assets would require a massive outlay. The effort to resupply munitions and restore combat readiness would divert resources from other vital national priorities. Yet even as Israel sought to rebuild and rearm, its military reputation, a cornerstone of its deterrence posture, could be fundamentally altered. For decades, Israel has been regarded as one of the most capable and technologically advanced militaries in the region, if not the world. A direct and extended missiles onslaught, particularly if Iran and its proxies like Hezbollah managed to temporarily overwhelm Israel's layered defenses, could expose vulnerabilities that had previously been theoretical. The psychological impact of saturation attacks, thousands of rockets and missiles launched in a short period, would be profound, both for the Israeli public and for observers beyond its borders. Symbolically, any significant damage to civilian or military infrastructure would be seized upon by Israel's rivals as evidence of the limits of its deterrence. Even if Israel were to achieve its operational objectives, the narrative could shift from invulnerability to vulnerability, from dominance to a more precarious balance. In the age of global media, the perception of victory or defeat is often shaped as much by images and headlines as by facts on the ground. News coverage, social media discourse, and diplomatic statements would all play a role in shaping how the world views the outcome and Israel's place in the new regional order. This shift in perception could trigger broader strategic consequences. Iran, emboldened by having demonstrated its reach and resilience, might find new opportunities to consolidate its influence across the region. Hezbollah, Hamas, and other Iranian-aligned groups could be inspired to escalate their own activities, convinced that Israel's deterrent edge has been blunted. In this context, the power balance between Israel and its adversaries could begin to shift in subtle but significant ways. For the Gulf Arab states, the implications would be equally far-reaching. In recent years, initiatives like the Abraham Accords have seen a warming of relations between Israel and key Arab nations, driven in part by shared concerns about Iran's regional ambitions. However, if Israel were perceived as weakened or overly reliant on external support, some of these states might reconsider the wisdom of close security cooperation. The calculus of alliances could shift, with some countries seeking to hedge their bets or even pursue rapprochement with Iran as a means of ensuring their own security. The involvement of major global powers would be almost inevitable. The United States, long Israel's principal ally, would face immense pressure to provide military and diplomatic support, potentially risking escalation into a wider conflict. Russia, with its interests in Syria and broader regional aspirations, could seek to mediate or exploit the chaos for its own benefit. European nations, concerned about regional stability and the threat of refugee flows, would likely push for urgent diplomatic solutions. The interplay of these external actors could reshape the post-war landscape as dramatically as the conflict itself. Within Israel, the political and social repercussions would be profound. The strains of a long, costly war could erode public confidence in the government and military leadership. Questions would be raised about the adequacy of preparedness and the wisdom of strategic decisions made in the lead-up to and during the conflict. Elections could become referendums on national security, with opposition parties capitalizing on public anger or disillusionment. The unity that often characterizes Israel in times of crisis could give way to recrimination and political upheaval. Internationally, Israel's image would come under renewed scrutiny. The conduct of the war, particularly the humanitarian consequences, would be closely monitored by the United Nations, human rights organizations, and global media. Accusations of disproportionate force, civilian casualties, or destruction of infrastructure could lead to diplomatic isolation or punitive measures. Even long-standing allies might be compelled to publicly criticize or distance themselves, at least temporarily, in response to domestic and international pressure. It's important to recognize that the same calculus of loss applies to Iran. Any large-scale confrontation would impose devastating costs on the Iranian population and economy, already strained by years of sanctions and internal challenges. Iranian cities and military assets would be at risk of Israeli retaliation, and the potential for internal unrest would rise as the human and economic toll mounted. The leadership in Tehran would face its own set of questions about the wisdom and sustainability of confrontation. Ultimately, the lesson of modern warfare is that victory is a concept fraught with complexity. While one side may achieve its immediate objectives or inflict greater losses, the broader costs, economic, human, reputational, and strategic, can outweigh any temporary sense of triumph. The devastation wrought by advanced weaponry, the dislocation of civilian populations, the fraying of alliances, and the erosion of deterrence all serve as sobering reminders that in wars of this scale, there are no true winners. In the aftermath, both Israel and Iran would have to grapple with the reality of diminished stature, battered economies, and societies in mourning. The region as a whole would be left to pick up the pieces, facing new uncertainties and dangers that could persist for a generation. The world would be reminded, once again, of the urgent necessity of diplomacy and restraint. In a region where the consequences of conflict reach far beyond any single border,